Hi everybody, it's Jo Dyer here, and I'd like to say a big thank you to you for downloading the visualization and design checklist freebie, and I hope it's proving useful to you. I thought I would just pop in with a little video into this email to give you a little bit of help, because I know that there are a lot of questions on the design checklist, and you may not know the answers to all of them. And there's one in particular that you might not feel very confident about, and that is the question of what type of soil do you have? Now, some of you will know. You'll know all about this, and so you don't need to watch this video. But if you're wondering, what does she mean? What's she going on about? You know, isn't soil? It's that brown stuff we grow stuff in. Well, yes, it is. But there are different sorts of soils, and and the type of soil you have will influence the kind of plants you can grow. So it's really useful for you to know a little bit about your soil. And so the two things that I want to tell you about today and help you with are measuring the pH value of your soil, which is a measure of whether it's acidic or alkaline, and the texture of your soil, which is a measure of how much clay or sand you may have in your soil. Now, these are important considerations because, as I said before, they influence what you can grow and how you manage your soil, which is for another video. So I want to talk about measuring pH, and the pH scale is a scale that measures acidity and alkalinity, and in the middle we have the number 7. It's on a numerical scale, 7 in the middle, which is neutral, which is what water is, and then anything below 7 is acidic, and anything above 7 is alkaline. And you may have heard of acid-loving plants. Well, those are the plants that really do prefer and need an acidic soil, and we can class rhododendrons, azaleas, camellias and heathers as acid-loving plants, and there are others. And so if you want to grow those plants in your garden, you need acidic soil, and if you don't have it, they won't thrive in the soil. You'll need to put them in pots. So this is why it's important to have some idea of the pH of your soil. And at the other end of the scale, we have the alkaline soils. And it has to be said that most plants will grow in a very wide range of pHs. You know, you needn't get too hung up about this. But there are some plants that prefer an alkaline soil, and clematis is one of them. So if you want to grow clematis, but you've got acidic soil, the clematis might not thrive in your garden. So you might need to find a variety that grows in a pot, for example. So, you know, this is useful stuff to know. And so what you need to do is you need to test the pH of your soil, and you can do this by buying a pH testing kit, and you can find these in the garden centres. They cost about £9, and they come in a little plastic sort of cassette thing, and they contain, see if I can do this without spilling everything, everything you need to test your soil. There you go. You've got a test tube for your soil sample, some barium sulfate, which you use to measure the pH, and some liquid that you use to measure as well, the pH soil testing liquid. And over here, you've got a little colour chart that when you've taken your test, the liquid will go a colour, and you can compare it to this chart, and it will tell you where your soil lies on the pH scale. And some kits have a handy little, this one does, a little booklet that lists different plants and the pH values that they prefer. So that's quite a useful thing to have in the kit. So you need one of those to test your pH your pH of your soil. You can also buy prong devices, but I find that they're not as accurate. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of water in the soil. And when we come, now I want to tell you how to take your soil sample. You'll need a soil sample to do this test. And it isn't just a matter of going into your garden and taking a little scraping of soil off the top of the garden. What you need to do is get your spade, dig a hole, a spade's depth, and then take your sample from the bottom of the hole. And you'll get a more accurate reading. And then what you need to do for this test is to dry that soil sample, because the water in the soil will influence the results you get. So you need to dry the soil. You can do that just pop the soil into a little tray and maybe pop it on top of a radiator or put it in your microwave on a very low heat, and in your oven perhaps at a low heat, and just dry it out thoroughly so it's completely dry, and then you can take the test. So that's how you test your pH. The other thing that I want to talk about is soil texture. Now this is the relative amounts of clay and sand that you have in your soil. All soils will contain clay, sand and silt particles, and the relative amounts of these different things in your soils influence how moisture retentive your soil is. So you may have heard of a heavy clay soil. Now it's described as heavy if it's got a lot of clay in, because it's very moisture retentive and because the water doesn't drain through the soil very easily because of the nature of the clay particles. So if you've got a lot of clay in your soil, it's moisture retentive. And if you have a lot of sand in your soil, it's very free draining because the water can get around the bigger sandy particles and escape. So it's really important to know this, because different plants will thrive in different conditions. So you'll get plants that really like water, and you'll get plants that really like a free draining soil. So things like lavender, for example, like a really, really free draining soil, but a fern or a hosta will cope with a really moisture retentive soil. So this is really handy to know. So how do you test how much clay and sand you've got in your soil? Well, a very simple way to do this, and quite a fun way, well, I think it's fun anyway, to do this is to take another sample of soil from the hole you've just dug for your pH test. So take a bit more soil, put it into a container of some description, add a little bit of water, and then roll the soil into a ball in your hand. Now you're going to get very dirty hands doing this. So be warned. So rub the soil into a ball in your hand, and if your hand starts to get very dirty very quickly and it starts to get sticky, and then you sort of roll the ball into a sausage length, like a sausage roll, a very thin sort of licoricey shape, and then you can shape it into different shapes without it breaking, you've got a very clay soil. Now, I've seen some soils that you could make pots with. They've got that much clay in. Most soils are not like that. But if you can mould this little lump of soil into different shapes without it breaking, you've got a lot of clay in your soil. If, on the other hand, it breaks up, you can't shape this ball into shapes, and it breaks up and it feels gritty, and you can even perhaps hear that it's gritty, get a bit and listen to it, then you've got a relatively sandy soil, and it will be more free draining, and your hands won't get as dirty. Yeah. So that's a very, very simple way to test your soil. It's not particularly scientific, and it won't give you the actual percentage of clay or sand in your soil, but it's a good indicator, and that's good enough. So that's a really useful way, a really handy, quick, easy way to test whether you've got clay soil or sandy soil. And it's important to know these things because it will influence the kinds of plants that you can grow in your garden. So I hope you found that useful. And I might add that, that if you're just raring to go and you haven't got time to go through the design checklist and you want to go through it with somebody and you want some advice, then please do give me a call and we'll have a chat about how I can help you to create that garden that will hold you in a big green hug every day. I really want you to have the garden that you want. So if you need some help, please do reach out and we'll see if we can work together. Okay, I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.